Hello and welcome to a discussion on marriage mentoring. My name is Carl Caton and I help facilitate the work of the San Antonio Marriage Initiative, and I'm with this crazy group of people who are real excited about marriage. And we're going to talk about marriage mentoring, but that's actually the wrong word, right?
Well, it's not so much the wrong word, but I prefer to use the word sponsor because I come out of the Catholic tradition where at baptism everybody gets a sponsor, and the sponsor is supposed to be a good example of what it is to be a Christian, to share that experience with the baptized person. So that's where using the term sponsored couple started being used to get ordinary kind of folks who are living marriage to work with engaged couples to help them understand that once you get married and you figure out that romantic love isn't exactly what marriage is, then you have a sponsor who can help you sort all that out.
Okay, all right. Well, this is Rob Runke is speaking here, and Rob, how long have you been doing the marriage ministry?
Well, I actually started in 1969, but I didn't...
When some of us were barely born, right?
Right. I was ordained already and started helping with the marriage preparation programs. But it was at about 1975 that there was a priest in San Antonio who started this idea of recruiting married people to work one-on-one with engaged couples. And so I was in Houston at the time, and I was looking over there and I said, you know, we should try that in Houston, and it was such a success that I've really devoted probably the rest of my life to helping that project forward, to get more and more churches to use sponsored couples or mentor couples, whatever people choose to call them, to work with engaged couples.
Okay, and along the way you wrote the book For Better and Forever.
Right. When
did that happen?
This particular edition, you're looking at the 1998 edition. The first edition was in 1975 that we were printing in our office in Houston. It was published by a publishing company in 1980, and then in 89 we updated that edition, and then in 98 we came up with a whole new update of the project. We think this is the best.
Okay, that's good.
And we have a Catholic edition, English and Spanish. We have a Protestant edition, English and Spanish. And we even have a Covenant edition, which is a not faith-based edition. And we also have the Catholic edition in Vietnamese now.
That's amazing. And these couples that are here with us today, you have a special relationship with them. Why don't you introduce them?
Okay, this is Victor and Liz Bolanos. Well, I met them on their first date.
Yes. You didn't go with us on our first date. You were just there.
But it was a kind of fun story. I just happened to go visiting some friends of mine. At that time, it was Victor's house, but my friends were staying there for a little while their house was being built. Right. So I went over to see my friends, met Victor, and heard the story that he was going out on that date with Liz.
Wow.
So it was great.
It was. It was a great time. Sorry you missed it, but we had fun since then. 17 years ago, Rob.
Okay.
17 wonderful years.
And so they had such a good time on the date, and it was all because of me.
That's right.
That I asked them to be a sponsor couple as soon as they got married. So they've been helping since then.
Yes. For about 15 years now.
Wow, that's great.
We've sponsored probably 40, 50, 60 couples, I would say, in the 15 years that we've been married. Wow. So we've been busy. Thank you.
And this is Charlie and Michelle. And I met Charlie and Michelle about, what, 3 or 4 years ago?
Yes,
okay.
4 years ago.
And so we collaborated on getting them ready for marriage, and I asked Victor and Liz to sponsor them. And then since they've been married, only how long?
2.5.
They've already sponsored
one couple.
Right. And they're about to sponsor another one.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's great. You're off to a good start. Okay. Well, we're talking about marriage mentoring and how many pastors and churches and priests and parishes are discovering that this is a very effective tool for helping couples be more successful in marriage. And so the question that I hear from them is, well, how do you begin? What's the first step? And Rob, why don't you take a stab at that? How do you begin a marriage mentoring program to raise up sponsored couples?
Okay, and I think both of these couples are an example of my approach is, for the longest time, been just go ask people very, very personally, because I don't think it's usually useful to make pulpit announcements or put it in the bulletin. And the reason for that is because most people think enough about marriage that they would tend to not volunteer if you just ask the whole group. But the best couples are indeed the people that think enough about it to wonder whether they're really qualified. So I think we alleviate all of that by just saying, Charlie and Michelle, would you help me? Victor and Liz, would you help me? And I'm going to think about it and look for couples that I have some hunches about. I don't know anything for sure, but they just look to me like couples that are married and they're in relationship with one another. And why not ask them to do this?
Okay.
And most of the time when I ask, they'll be kind of amazed, but usually they say yes.
Yeah. Well, what do these couples look like typically? When you're looking for couples in a parish or church that might fit this description, what are they? How is it how they live their life? Is it their...
Well, when I'm standing in the pulpit and looking at the congregation, I'm looking at people like this.
So if they're asleep, you probably wouldn't pick them, right?
Yeah, especially if I'm talking. No. But the point is, they're both in church.
Yeah.
So that's one thing.
So together.
Yeah, a lot of people are not sitting together in church for whatever reason. But these people are sitting together in church. Also, I've probably seen them before. So it's not that the first time they've been here, or I've had some relationship with them. You can tell a lot about people, simple things like, do they look kind of like they like one another?
Yeah, maybe body language.
Body language,
Right.
Yeah.
It's amazing how you see it. Isn't it funny how some couples, they sit far apart, or some couples sit close
They have
together.
the kids in between them.
Yeah, that's right. So, yeah.
So there's a lot of those little things. Are they nice people? If I say hello, do they say hello back? You know, do they engage in conversation? Another big telling thing is that when you talk to them, as an individual couple, do they both are they both willing to take part in the conversation? Or does one of them just kind of stand there and watch the other one talk? Those are simple things that you can figure out really quickly.
How about the way they treat each other? Is that a telltale sign?
Absolutely, sure.
How they speak of one another?
Yep. Because a lot of times you can tell a big thing. If I would ask Charlie something and say, what about us getting together next week or something? Rather than say, yeah, we'll do that, he'll say, well, let's check this out with Michelle.
Now let the record show I had to learn that.
But you learn very quickly.
In dialogue I had to learn that.
So I don't know what else to say. What else can you think of to ask me?
Well, I think you're taking a real relational approach rather than a promotional approach that we hear a lot of people wondering about. Should we send out a big email blast and maybe whoever responds to that? But you're really taking a relational approach. You're looking at these folks that you see, and you look at how they treat one another and other people around them, and you're using that. Now, are these couples that you're picking out, these couples have perfect marriages? Of course, these two couples did. What do you think?
No.
Right.
Not at all. As a matter of fact, the couples at our church that we selected, it's really, if there are a perfect couple, it's probably a couple we don't, or they feel like they're a couple. It's probably not a good sponsor couple, because what we're looking for is couples who everyday lives, go through everyday situations, And
Real life situation.
real life situations, exactly, and you want to make sure that when they're sponsoring an engaged couple, that they come to the home, they'll see your home, they see your family, they may see children around, and just exactly what they're going to expect once they're getting married. So that's the kind of couples that our pastor and we look for. Someone the word recruiting, if you want to use the word recruiting, or just simply asking couples to come.
So couples real often don't feel qualified maybe to do this, right?
Oh yeah.
Or if they feel very qualified, maybe you don't want to use them.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, we wouldn't want people who would get an engaged couple in their house and say, well, sit down and we're going to tell you
Right.
everything.
Yeah.
You know, we wouldn't want those kind of people. I think another thing, when we're starting and you have maybe a big church and you're saying, we need lots of couples to do this, you can feel very intimidated by saying, how are we going to get that many people?
Right.
But I think an important thing is you start with one couple and you get the thing going, and then you gain confidence with seeing how it's working. Then you have the ability to recruit some more people, and you can tell them, see what George and Sally are doing. How about you also helping with this project? So it's just, you build them one couple at a time.
So you don't announce that you're going to start this big program and appoint a staff member and create all sorts of expectations. You just start out slow and organically grow it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, in our church, we started off with, I think, 5 couples, and it's grown over the years to over 30 sponsored couples. But it wasn't overnight. So as we grew.
So what did you feel like when Rob asked you to be a sponsored couple?
We wanted to know what we did wrong. No, I'm kidding.
Well, actually, you were first you were sponsored, right?
Yes,
By another couple.
We were sponsored, and we had only been married a couple of years when Rob called on us, and we didn't feel like we had the necessary tools to share with other couples or to be involved in the program. But it's like Rob said, and Victor, we just want ordinary couples who are living marriage, who are going through life and experiencing marriage along the way, not a perfect couple. And we've kind of grown in the process of sponsoring as many couples as we've had. We've grown ourselves. So there is a good benefit to the married couple as well as the sponsor couple when it comes to working with an engaged couple. And that's a sort of a selfish benefit, but it is a benefit to us as a married couple, because sometimes we all get busy with our own lives and we forget about the little things that are important. So it's a good time to sit down and center ourselves when we're meeting with an engaged couple. It helps to bring to mind that we sometimes can take each other for granted, and so it helps to just recenter ourselves in our marriage. So it's a very good program for the married couple as well.
Oh, okay. So y'all went through the process more recently.
We did.
And what did that feel like? I mean, was it awkward for you, or how were you contacted, and were you matched at the local parish?
Well, first, Father Ronke connected us with Liz and Victor, and they were our sponsor couple.
Okay.
We prepared for marriage, and they did a wonderful job. We got the best. And I guess shortly thereafter, Father Ronke said, well, would you like to be a part of this? Would you consider being a sponsor couple? And Michelle and I both said, sure, yeah. And so as I mentioned, we've sponsored one couple.
Yeah.
They were a very impressive young couple. And I enjoyed the process a lot. We had them over to our home on, 8 or 10 nights. The way that I experienced it was we sort of opened up a space, opened up conversations for them to begin to consider aspects of marriage that perhaps they had not thought about. And in a couple of instances, I remember we asked them questions that they had not posed to one another or to themselves, which I thought was very, probably very useful for them to open a dialogue, a discussion together about these aspects, of having children and timing and how many, I could tell they had not discussed that before.
Finances.
And finances. You know, some very practical dimensions to marriage that, you know, can either be supportive or stumbling blocks. And so I found it, you know, to go back to the question of, you know, is the sponsor couple really an expert in teaching them this and this and this, as much as opening up a space for certain discussions to take place, and I think ultimately give them the experience of dialoguing on important dimensions of their own marriage.
And even as little things as who we're going to spend the holiday with. If we're going to spend, especially if you have children, we're going to have to split the holidays. There were things that, you know, they were, you know, didn't think about or thought that'll all just get worked out, which it really needs to be talked about. And I thought it was interesting too, in the book there's a lot of scenarios. We of course read each chapter before we met with them, and there were certain scenarios where a couple would go through something, and how would you handle that? And Charlie and I would sit and discuss something that we both felt very strongly about, and then this other couple would read it and say, no, we didn't have a problem with that at all.
So at that point, were they sponsoring you?
Like, seriously, went fishing without you and didn't tell you? No, we've got to talk about this. So, definitely a learning experience on both sides, I think.
Well, y'all were very transparent saying that you had both been previously married.
Yes.
How has this been kind of a redemptive process for that? And how have you used what maybe the pain that you've been through for the good of the kingdom and for the good of other couples?
Sure. That's a deep question. It has been a total, you know, joy to be in a relationship and to have this second chance that the Lord has blessed me with, and to know that we're perhaps of service to the Lord with regards to engaged couples is rewarding in itself. And you know, you going through some of these chapters, the issues, you know, you realize, goodness gracious, I was so unprepared and naive the first time through. And if the Lord can use us to help couples prepare better, you know, it's a wonderful experience to be a part of that.
Yeah, so you're really making an impact on other couples really for generations.
One hopes.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I had told Rob that I think this book, you know, is such a great tool for couples. I think if I got married extremely young in my first marriage, but I think if I would have had an opportunity to have a program like this, I really think I would have thought, wow, we haven't discussed any of that. I haven't thought of any of that. I don't know, it might have made me really pause before I would have went into marriage, and I think that that's so important to really think about.
Well, Victor and Liz, you all have sponsored many couples. How many couples is it again?
I would say somewhere around 50 probably in 15 years.
So as she just related, have there been any couples that had a pause? Did any couples decide not to marry that you sponsored, or has everyone decided to go ahead?
I think we've had a couple of couples, a couple of couples who postponed.
Oh,
Yeah.
good.
They've postponed. They eventually were getting married, but said, well, we're not going to do it right now.
So it gave them more time to prepare and be ready.
Yeah, I think the one we run into most is children. Preparing for children and having children is the discussions of it, when to have children, and those are the ones that we find like, wait a minute, we're going to have 6, 8, 10 children. No, maybe not. Realistic, and how soon to have children.
Yeah.
When they plan to have children. That's where we run into a lot of.
Well, you're veterans at this now, but was there ever a time that maybe you didn't feel real adequate for the job, or did you ever have fears of like being exposing, you know, your own secrets to other couples? Was there ever awkward times in meeting with couples? Or how does that work out for you all?
Well, I think that initially we probably felt that way, but one thing that we always share with our couples is that we kind of take the couple to the other side of the river, if you will, and say, whatever happens over here stays over here. And, you know, we will share things with you about our marriage, that we would like for it to stay on that side of the river, and vice versa. They will do the same with us. And we really, I think, create a bond with this couple. We do have couples that we sponsored 10, 12 years ago that we're still in contact with. So it's a different level that you take your relationship to with these couples. But I think certainly early on we probably thought, oh my gosh, what are we doing? But you know, and Rob's very good at just reassuring us is that just live your marriage life through this couple, share with them what you have, and that's the most important part.
That's a good point, Rob. You know, I think I've heard sponsored couples say we don't feel qualified because isn't that like counseling? Well, what's the difference between counseling and being a sponsored couple? I mean, is a sponsored couple supposed to be able to counsel other people, or really are they supposed to do it differently? How would you describe that?
It might depend on what you mean by sponsoring, but when I train sponsor couples, what I'm telling them is that all the material is in the book, so you don't have to give any speeches or any lectures. You don't. In fact, everybody does the same work. The sponsor couple and the engaged couple, they read the material, they answer all the questions, they talk with one another, and then the sponsor couple invites them to their home, and then they have a discussion about the things that we talked about and the things that we learned and all that sort of thing. So it's not somebody on a higher position talking at somebody else. Everybody is learning.
Yeah.
Then the other thing is, I think it's important for sponsor couples, even for me. The most important thing I do when people come to me and say, well, what am I going to do about this? The most important thing I do is say, what do you think? Rather than try to come up with an answer for them, I'm more effective when I take them seriously enough to listen to what they can figure out, because that's what they're going to have to do. So I try to live this in my own life. I hardly ever will get an answer to somebody else. I'm more likely to ask another question and then get big ears and not say very much.
So it's more of a coaching and listening approach rather than it is a lecturing approach.
Absolutely.
And the book gives you a framework to work through with the couple to take them through the process. How many weeks does it take to go through the book together?
It's intended to be flexible because a lot of things are in play, like when is the wedding and all that sort of thing. But hopefully there's enough time to get together with the sponsor couple and the engaged couple about 4 to 6 times, depending on the kind of history they bring to the project. Some people would be moving into a step family and other people wouldn't. So there are some things that some couples wouldn't need to do so much. And sometimes the sponsor couple is working with a couple who is already maybe civilly married for many years. And so that's a very different project, but they use the same book, and they might condense some of that because it may be fine to do it that way. And then some couples, as they just said, they might even choose to meet more often than is even recommended. They could do that. So it's meant to be a very, very flexible program, and so it depends a lot on the engaged couple, their maturity and their willingness to work and want to learn more, and the ability of the sponsor couple to guide them and cheer them on in that project.
A lot of marriage preparation programs use inventories like Prepare, Enrich, or Focus. Is this book an inventory in and of itself, or do you use an inventory with this book?
No, it's not an inventory because it assumes that if the pastor or whoever wants to use an inventory, that would be done before they would be assigned to a sponsor couple.
Okay, right.
So that the other thing I would add is that the sponsor couple process never ends at the point of the wedding. The important goal, and in training sponsor couples, we really insist on this, you have to take initiative beyond the wedding to follow up with the couple, because we all know that almost every couple can manage to get married. But oftentimes when they get married, then they begin to have issues, and that's when there needs to be a phone call from the sponsor couple.
Right.
Because they're not going to call the sponsor couple back, or me, because they'll be too embarrassed.
Right.
Because they said they would be fine. They don't want to call us up and say, we're having trouble. But if the sponsor couple makes a phone call, we've just got lots and lots of stories as to how that really made a positive impact and saved some marriages.
Wow, that's amazing. Charlie, have you followed up with the couple that y'all sponsor? Or?
Good question. Our couple has been married now about, I think, 15 months,
Okay.
if I'm not mistaken. So we are due to follow up with them now. I think this is about the time, you know, was suggested a year and a half or so after they were married. So
Yeah.
we are just about to contact them for that purpose. So we haven't spoken with them.
How's your relationship been with them after they've gotten married? Have you been able to?
We have not really talked with them or seen them since then. They were married out of state.
Oh, okay.
And one of them is in medical school, very, you know, very busy. The other was doing a PhD and very busy. So I think this may be a good chance now.
Yeah.
I know one of them's finished school.
Yeah.
And so it'll be about a year and a half here pretty soon.
Fun to check in with them and see how they're doing.
Yeah. I'd like to see them, you know, invite them back to the house for, you know, visit to see how they're doing.
It's an interesting relationship that I think you would have with this couple. It seems like they would always have a connection to you.
I would think so. I envision that would be the case because, like Liz was saying, you do share on a certain level, and that creates a bond, and which could endure, you know, for a long period of time.
You know, you just wonder about these couples that get married. You know, there's all the complexity of their own families relating to them. It just seems like you're a real safe place. You're a real safe couple to be able to communicate with, and so you could have a very different kind of relationship rather than father-in-law or mother-in-law.
Kind of a sounding board.
Right.
Yeah.
And unviced.
Right. We always say
We're very neutral. Very neutral.
Okay.
So.
Don't take sides.
Exactly. Versus we tell the couple, you know, you may go to your best friend or your mom or someone like that, or he may go to his best friend or his dad or his brother or whatever.
Right.
It's coming to us, but we're unbiased, you know. If you want to come to us or come to you, I mean, we're going to share with you what, you know, whatever situation they come across. I mean, an unbiased decision.
Yeah. Well, you all have invested in a lot of couples, and so do you. What does that investment feel like? Do they? You feel like that they better keep it together, otherwise you're going to be talking to them, or you've got a pretty good record.
We make them sign a contract. No.
Yeah.
No. You know, I would like to think that, you know, I think there's a lot of couples that have shared a lot with us over the years, and some things that they may not share with their families, as we've talked about. And there have been situations where couples have come back to us and said, you know, we hit a bump in the road. What can I do? And it's mostly, like Rob said, just listen. Well, tell me what's going on. And by the time that you're at the end of the conversation, they've really figured out already the answer. They just needed that safe place, as you mentioned, to talk to someone to say, oh, okay, I've got it figured out now. Thank you so much. Keep in contact. Call me whenever you want. You know, that type of situation. And it always seems to work. And I think that we have couples that we see at church that we've sponsored that are part of our pool, if you will, at church and even other places. So it's nice to see them still hanging on.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Do you feel like you have a legacy, you know, that left of these couples or some
No.
Well, you should.
You know, and it's interesting talking about that is because our pastor, what was happening quite a bit prior to this was that a lot of couples were coming in to get married here, and then they kind of just fallen away or went somewhere else, and so that's the reason why this program was started here. It's like, because we see them now, you know, we talk to them. I don't see them every Sunday, if not more often. Couples we sponsored or other couples who sponsored other couples there, and inviting them to our church, and you know, after marriage, you can still attend church, you know.
Be part of the community.
You know, be part
Right.
of the community, so that's what's happened, or we've seen happen over the years, is now, versus just getting married and leaving, they're able to stay there, continue there, and, you know,
Relationship.
and grow the relationship there.
Well, y'all certainly invested a lot of your time and your life in these couples. Has there been a payback, or how has it impacted your marriage? Does it make your marriage better as well? Or how does this whole process affect it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think, you know, being selfish a little bit about that. You know, this program, you would think that you're here to help the couple, which you are, the engaged couple. But I think, and I think Joe agreed, you know, you get just as much out of it, you know, helping them and helping yourself in your relationship with each other. It's you know, sometimes it's a little wake-up call, and little things here and there say, oh, you know what? You know, again, like Liz was saying, sometimes we get so caught up in our lives and get so busy, we may take some things for granted, say, hey, we need to stop and really, really pay attention to what we're doing, because you don't like to share with something with couples, because we do something if you're not practicing it yourself.
Sure.
What would you say to a pastor or a priest that's trying to recruit sponsored couples? What would be your advice to them?
I think first and foremost that it is not, you don't have to look for the perfect couple. I think that they may have a little bit of apprehension about where do I get these people from, but I think it is look out in your congregation when you're there on the weekends or whenever you have services or mass, and just look at the couples as we talked about early on, and invite them to coffee and ask them, you know, this is what we're thinking about doing. This is a project that we feel passionate about marriage, and if they have some little bit of an excitement about marriage, then they're probably the couple that you want involved in the process. And I really believe that, you know, so many couples, we've talked about earlier too, how high divorce rate is. I think that pastors, if they invested more time on the front end with couples and getting a program in place, sponsor couple program in place, they would have less time, or they wouldn't have to spend so much time, I should say, with couples who come to their office and say, I need to meet with you because my marriage is in trouble. And that's really what we want to do, is save couples from getting to that point. And I really think that the sponsor program is the way to go in saving marriages. It has, I know for some couples that we've sponsored over time, and I really think that churches can benefit from using a program like this.
You know, it's been said that every church has a marriage ministry. Some churches, the marriage ministry is they spend very little time on preparation and enrichment, and they spend all the rest of their time on couples in crisis. Whereas if couples spent more time in preparation and enrichment, then they would spend much less time in couples in crisis. And so it really is an investment. Every church has a marriage ministry, whether it is official or not, because every church is dealing with couples in crisis. And so to invest a little bit more early pays big dividends later on.
Sure.
Yeah.
A really simple but practical example of this is when I look at myself, because I've been ordained quite a number of years and I've pastored more than one parish, so I would do it differently than I did a long time ago. So for example, now, it was some months back, a couple whose wedding I helped to celebrate maybe 3 or 4 years ago actually called me, and they were having some kind of issue, and we started to talk about it. I thought, wait a minute. I said, I wonder if they've called their sponsor couple, and I think maybe not. So I said, time out, did you call your sponsor couple? And they said, no. And I said, well, maybe because you're embarrassed or whatever, but your job is to call them. Call them right now and then call me back. Because what happened was, because I said, I don't want to talk to you anymore until you talk to the sponsor couple. They did that. Problem solved. I didn't have to do any more work to do.
Sure.
So it was an incredibly practical thing.
Yes.
Because the sponsor couple listening to it accomplished more than I did by listening to them, because I'm not married. They were married, and their ability to listen to that and sort of normalize what the couple was going through was more effective than what I could possibly do. So it's a really practical reason to do just what you're saying, that because if I'm the pastor now, the way I would set it up, having sponsor couples, I end up doing less of the work than I used to with marriage preparation, but we get much more accomplished, and now we have follow-up to it, and we have better people resources that when people do need some help, it's not good, it doesn't need to be me, and it doesn't need to be a therapist.
Very good. Michelle and Charlie, what is your advice to pastors or churches that are interested in starting a sponsor couple program?
Gosh, I'm not sure I can offer anything more than what's been said about, you know, the personal invitation.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, I've been on both sides where I've been in ministry in some capacity, and then as Michelle and I are more, you know, as parishioners, if there is a pulpit announcement or a bulletin announcement, I would, you know, hesitate to say, well, you know, what's required here? You know, how could I possibly help? You know, those sorts of issues.
Right.
And the personal invitation, I think, comes along with, you know, an affirmation. It says, I think you're capable of doing this.
Right.
And that's, I think, awfully affirming, you know,
Yes.
to where folks would say, yes, I can step forward and offer, you know, I can offer to help. So
that was a factor that influenced you.
Sure.
Was somebody giving you that confidence that you could do this?
the
job?
personal invitation comes with an implied affirmation, I think.
Good point.
Sure.
Good point. And how about the idea of doing ministry together as a couple? Isn't that neat? You know, because so many church ministries pull couples apart.
It does.
He's working on the maintenance committee, and she's working on the hosting committee or something like that. But what value does it bring for y'all to ministry together?
Oh, it was wonderful. I mean, it was a wonderful experience. You know, one of the things that was, I joked about earlier, was a reality where I was used to being on my own for a number of years, making my own decisions, and I was accepting invitations or making decisions without consulting with Michelle. And so I remember as we, you know, met with our engaged couple, talking about how I had to relearn to be more communicative and proactive and talking things over with Michelle. And, you know, I suppose some people would find that embarrassing, but I kind of found it a little bit liberating to say, yeah, these are the things that I've been doing wrong, that I've learned. And I think just articulating that, you know, was a blessing for us, for me to, you know, to say, these are my growing areas. These are where I'm, you know, where I need to grow.
I also think it's nice for our children to see us doing this together.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think it's important for them to see that, you know, we must be doing something right for helping somebody else.
They're coming to us for sage advice.
There you go.
But I think that's a good point, though, of doing ministry together, because it is very easy to get involved in separate ministries where it's not feeding the marriage.
Right. Good point.
It's certainly ministering to others, but it's not at the same time feeding the marriage.
My wife is Kelly, and we've been married for 30 years, and we've decided early in our marriage that marriage is one place we really wanted to succeed in our faith. And so that's one reason why we chose marriage ministry, is because it's a ministry that helps you grow in an area that's a very high priority to you in your life. And so I think there's a lot of value in that. What else, Rob, do you want to add to the conversation? Anything else you want to share? Wisdom?
I was just trying to put myself in the shoes of a pastor who might be looking at this. And I don't know that every pastor knows this. It took me a long time to learn this, so I'm just wondering. But I think in the beginning, my biggest concern was how could Victor and Liz be qualified really to do the kind of work that I had gone through seminary training and all that sort of thing? So how could they do that? And I just kind of had to look at myself in the mirror and say, this is a thing about faith, Rob.
Yeah.
Either you believe in baptism, and that baptism makes us all brothers and sisters in the Lord, and then there are consequences. That we're not baptized just to kind of sit around and pay, pray, and obey, as sometimes it's said. That each one of us, every couple, is as much called to ministry as I am. And I need to roll up my sleeves and take the courage to say, okay, so I'm going to trust that these couples can do a darn good job. Now the amazing thing is, it's overwhelmingly better than I had ever even hoped. Because like I get to travel around the country and go visit places and help train people and all that sort of thing. And every time I do that, there's some couple drags me aside and say, you know, we get more out of this than they do. Thank you for creating this because it saved our marriage, and we're, and I hear those stories every time I go someplace. So either people are just really lying a lot to me, or there's something about this. And so I want to say to the pastor, if you hadn't thought about this, in trying to set up this program in your parish, it's going to be a huge benefit to all those couples that you're going to have the courage to say, come and help me with this, and they are going to benefit from it, and they're going to be thanking you. You just have to have the courage to trust that they can do this, and God will help them do it.
Very good. Anything else you want to share about the materials that you have, or?
It's just that they're really good.
Yeah.
And we could talk a whole day about what's
Right.
in here and why it's here and all that
Right.
sort of thing. But we can certainly do that in other conversations in the future.
Yeah. Sounds good.
But it's really good material, because one of the good things about this is that my phone number and contact information is on the book. Anybody who ever sees these books can get in touch with me directly. So if anybody has a complaint and hasn't called me, too bad for them. But on the other hand, I get lots of phone calls, and it's oftentimes somebody calls me and they don't realize I'm going to answer the phone. They think it's just how you order the books.
Yeah.
So it's me who say, oh my God, you're the guy that wrote this book. And they say, let me tell you how good this program is.
Wow. That's good. Well, it's been a lot of fun just talking about this and marriage, and maybe we can talk about it again and help people understand more about what the next step would be after you've recruited the couples and how you train them and turn them loose. So, all right.
If I could just add one more thing. I love the fact that you guys have been doing this for 15 years. But you see, they didn't sit over there saying, we're the experts and all this sort of thing. They were just ordinary folks saying, we're learning how to do marriage, and we're still learning.
Yeah.
And the same comes out of these people over here. That's what I think this program, it helps people to learn how to be very humble people.
Right.
And that because they're all married, and they all know that marriage is work, and nobody ever perfectly gets it right all the time. And so it's an ongoing project. Just that's what it is to become a saint, or the person that God wants us to be.
Yeah. Very good. All right. Well, thanks to everybody.
Thank
You're very
you.
welcome.
Thank you for
Thank you.
inviting us.